My name is Dennis Califungo. We are at Fight Laugh Feast. I am privileged to be joined by Larry Taunton. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Great to be with you, brother.
You and I are making a habit out of this recently, so...
It's my second appearance on your show.
This is true. Well, I appreciate you giving me the time and lending your wisdom. I've told you as well, you've been a great influence over the years. So thank you.
Well, thank you. I'm very flattered.
Yeah, absolutely. So, of course, we're here at Fight Laugh Feast. I was just asking you a moment ago what you're speaking on. So you want to just open that up. What's your theme for this year?
I can't recall what title they've given it, but I've titled it Parental Priorities.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And what I'm getting at is, what is your priority in the raising of your children? Mm. And it really needs to be the spiritual training, the equipping of your children, but not just to defend them and hunker down and just hope they somehow, get through the world, but to take the offensive.
Right. Yeah. That's so good. I think we need that. I think we need that model. It seems like that's somewhat been lost or rejected to some degree. What's your theory of why we're in a place where we're trying to pick up the scraps and remind ourselves what education is for, what parenting is for?
I think about a century ago, the church, parents in general, they subcontracted, as it were, the education of their children. And so much so that today to even challenge that paradigm is to be pushed back. People think it's odd, strange. You would educate your children. And of course, for millennia, that's the way it was done. Mm. But that has been removed from parents, and the results of that have been catastrophic.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you think are some of the most devastating consequences of that?
Well, the demolition of faith, of course, the deconstruction of reality. Right. Honestly, and even when I was a kid, the kind of public schools I went to, which were in small towns, mostly, they were what Christian schools are today. Sure. I was taught the Lord's Prayer in public school. We had evangelists come and preach hell, and salvation, in our public schools. Right. And even then, having said all that, I would still say some of the great evils that I was exposed to came through, public education. I think parents have to be the number one influence in their children's lives. I think that peer influence is vastly overrated, at least positively. There's almost nothing positive that comes from that. Right. And, the socialization argument, which is the argument you make when you're losing the education, argument. So we had a very positive experience home educating our 4 children.
That's great.
They're all thriving in faith. They're not perfect. They're sinners, but they're all thriving in faith. And I would like to see that happen for more families.
Yeah. I'd like to see that happen too. Where I grew up and where I've lived, and my family homeschooled, or my parents homeschooled me and my 2 younger brothers. At the time, it was just so odd. Yeah. People there don't have a concept of an education that is not presided over by the state, or even just very distinctly a Christian education. Yeah. It's interesting that it's taken people almost 2 decades to kind of come around and actually see, there's actually something to this. Yeah. So many parents have lost their kids. I think there's some statistics in the U.S. that 2/3 of kids who go on to college lose their faith. And of course, it's not so much that everything dies in college. There was a lot that was happening before then that prepared them to lose their faith, essentially. And so I think there's a need for parents to, take up that responsibility once again. What have you found as the hardest sells to it? What is people's strongest objections to a very strong, concise, Christian, parent-led education? Well,
I've learned over the years there are a few things that it's difficult to criticize that people don't feel like it's very personal. Right. So when you, if you question the church they attend, if you question, the Greek system, so many people belong to sororities and fraternities. I've got massive pushback when I have questioned that, and also where they send their kids to school.
Absolutely.
And I think this is such a critical discussion. I can look back, Lori and I can look back to when we made the decision to home educate our children, which was in the early 90s when almost nobody, did that. It seemed to people almost cultish, and that we had a lot of pressure, that what we were doing was somehow, from Christians, as though it was a dereliction, of duty. And of course, we felt like it was exactly the opposite. And we began immediately seeing, the fruits of what we were doing. I realized very quickly that, first of all, school, much of it was just a waste of time. Quite literally a waste of time. Our children were, when we're talking elementary school, they were done within a, few hours and then have time to work on, other things. We also began to realize how much time was spent actually home educating our children, because by that I don't mean in actual homeschooling. I mean in public schooling. I'd say to my friends, you are home educating. You spend more time with your daughter or your son's homework than we do with the whole day. And I didn't want my wife living in the minivan. I didn't want my children spending all their time being ferried from one thing to another. And what was really transformative was the realization that rather than the life of the family surrounding the school, the school surrounded the life of the family. And so if I was traveling abroad or something to that effect, then the kids might go, or the whole family might go. There were just such incredible opportunities for that, and that's been borne out, all these years later as our children, are all married, starting to have children of their own, and are thriving.
So good. At the time, so you're picking this up in the 90s. There was far less options as far as curriculum goes, and what did you land on? How did you kind of figure your way or chart a path forward?
Well, Lori is actually really the expert when it came to this, because she did a lot of the groundwork and research, so I was busy, providing while she was researching this and presenting me with options on curriculums that we might use, finding school groups to which to be a part as the kids started getting older, how we would supplement that, because there were things that we wanted them to have, like, for instance, let's say some of the more advanced mathematics or physics, or let's say Latin and Greek. These were things that we wanted to have for our children. So you found ways to, cooperatives, this parent might teach this subject, and this parent might teach, this subject, ways that you could, you could supplement their education. But we found that our children were in no way lacking in education, and that they were well ahead of the curve.
Of course.
And it wasn't because, our kids were, how do I want to put it? It's not because our kids were, just exceptionally studious and studying all the time. It was just simply because we were aware, in a classroom, you have to educate to the lowest common denominator. So our children could move at whatever speed, was their speed, was their natural speed. And the opportunities for them to take in, more exciting things that are going on in the world, particularly as it related to my work. So I might be, having a debate, let's say, with Christopher Hitchens privately, the late atheist. My children are sitting there, are part of that discussion, or are part of a coffee while I'm sitting at John Lennox's house in Oxford. These kinds of opportunities were huge, for them. I remember my son Christopher going with me to Richard Dawkins' house. And, I called him my Sherpa. I said, you're going to carry my backpack and you're going to sit and listen to this conversation I'm having here. Now, I do recognize those were very exceptional opportunities. But even without them, the kind of education that our children were getting was just exceptional.
Exactly. What strikes me with what you're saying is you're not just describing some little classroom session.
That's right.
You're describing a whole life education as a whole.
Yes.
Where you can actually not just participate, you're leading it. And you're involving your children in what you're doing as a formative part of their education as well.
Exactly. And you're aware of what it is, the things that you want them to learn. I want you to read this book, and then, we'll discuss it next week when you've finished it. Or this is a film I want you to sit down and watch. But the biggest thing is that what's going on in the lives of your children. You know what's happening in the lives of your children. Whereas when my oldest he was going to an elite preparatory school, private school. And we realized that every time he came home from school for a vacation, this is why he was, quite young, that we had to go through what we call kind of a detox period.
Yes.
That there was all this baggage he was bringing, and a lot of it had to, it almost entirely had to do with the negativity of peers.
Right.
The bullying, even in an environment like that, or the pressure to be a part of this or to be a part of that, that he might even have developed a little bit of a mean streak. And we'd find that, take a few days to kind of detox. And we decided, we don't want this.
Sure.
This is not something we want. We don't think that what he's getting here, is worth it.
Exactly.
And our children all went to university on scholarship, and they all, have thrived. And so, again, home education, kids are outpacing every other educational demographic.
Absolutely.
I mean, the data bears this out, even with parents who are not college educated. So I think the difficulties of homeschooling are vastly, overrated.
Sure. Yes. Well, of course, I'm with New St. Andrews College. You know this. Our mission is to graduate leaders who shape culture, living faithfully under the lordship of Jesus Christ. Something you said towards the beginning of our conversation is the necessity for Christian parents to be proactive rather than reactive in their parenting, where there actually ought to be something we're aiming at, as opposed to this mentality where we think of homeschooling or home education as a survival tactic of sorts. So it's like, I just don't want my kids to be corrupted, and if I can make sure that they're not harmed by the world, then I'd have done my job. And in this case, what we really want is to produce the kind of children who are going to go on and launch as arrows, as the Lord calls them in
Psalm
127. That's what we want to see. How would you advise parents who are yet to make that kind of switch from a survival mentality to this proactive, hey, go on and launch? What do they need to believe in order for them to understand that?
I think that if they're not homeschooling, they need to get with successful homeschool parents.
That's good.
And have a conversation with them. Homeschool parents are generally happy to talk about how it works, and they're generally happy to help you.
Yes.
That's one thing.
Yeah.
If you're already homeschooling and you're not having success there, then I say you need a change of mentality, because our goal with our children was this. We want to prepare our children to one day, I recall hearing a parent say, I've heard many parents say this, you can't shelter your kids. And I think, well, what exactly is your job then? I mean, that's a primary calling of being a parent, that you do shelter them.
Exactly.
But there comes a time where, as you're acquainting them with the world and its wickedness and its challenges, where you're letting go and where you feel like they're ready. They're ready now to stand on their own 2 feet. And we wanted to raise our children to penetrate the corridors of power.
Absolutely.
For the sake of the gospel.
Amen.
And to be salt and light in the world, not just simply, again, just hunkering down and hoping to get through it.
Yes. Yes. I think that's so profound. I absolutely love that. Well, I want to be respectful of your time here. I know we've got a limited amount of time, but in closing, is there any way that we could be praying for you, your family, and just your work in general? Well,
you just pray. I appreciate that. You could pray that my talk tomorrow is effective, and people remember the parts that are good and forget the parts that maybe are not. And pray for our nation. Pray for our children. I feel a real passion for our children. I've probably devoted 30 plus years of my career working with youth in one form or another. And I mean, from the time that, really when I was too young to be a camp counselor, but was, beginning at 15 and, and moving forward. And kids are seeking mission. They're seeking mission. I'm going to share this story tomorrow when I speak, but I have decided recently I'm going to start crashing Antifa meetings. I'm going to start crashing them.
Yeah.
So I crashed one last week. And
if you ever need backup, I'm here for you.
Well, they said they're open to the public. They're open to anyone. And so I went, and I was just a fly on the wall. I wasn't there to challenge. I wasn't there to confront or, disrupt. And the thing that I came away with was this. Now, these were what Solzhenitsyn would call little lambs, meaning they did not strike me as the sort who were going to, would advocate the killing of Charlie Kirk, let's say. But they were individuals that were longing for mission. They were longing for purpose. And so what have they done? They've attached themselves to something that gives them this intoxicating illusion that they're harnessed to the steam engine of history.
Right.
And I came away feeling, both a sense of sadness, but also a feeling that we have to introduce them. We have to introduce them to Jesus Christ, who offers them the greatest mission of all, and reclaiming this world. And we're teleological beings. We're created for mission, and our young people are longing for it. And the idea, a kind of Christianity that's sort of on its heels, and is only speaking into the culture to point out what we don't agree with. That's not the Christianity we always want to be presenting. We want to present a positive, but that I don't mean like, Pollyanna. Rather, when I say positive, I mean advancing, where we're stating what we do believe.
Exactly.
And why what we have to offer is better.
Right.
And when we don't do that, the kids, lock into, they drop anchor in these evil ideologies, and it's ruinous, not only for them, but often for other people or maybe society as a whole. So that's what I would want to say. That's the mission I'd want to put out there.
That's so good. Well, thank you so much for lending your time and your wisdom to this conversation. So grateful for you. So grateful for just your support, honestly, in so many ways. And I hope we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. Yeah. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, Lennox. Absolutely. Appreciate your good work here.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.